Hey, everybody, welcome to the stream and Merry Christmas. In case I haven't spoken to you yet, welcome to my living room.
Merry Christmas.
Oh,
In case I haven't spoken to
okay, for some reason that was redirected. Oh, it's probably because I've got the YouTube live stream open. Let me get rid of that. There we go. No need for that. And then I'll be able to see you in the chat. So welcome to the stream. We're going to record the last podcast of the year, not the last one that I'm going to record, because I'm going to pre-record a few episodes for the month of January so I can take a break, a winter break, but definitely the last one that will be posted in the final days of 2022. So usually towards the end of the year, we kind of do wrap up topics. So it's going to be my list of favorite games of the year, favorite television shows of the year, maybe favorite recipes, plenty of other stuff. I hope you are enjoying a bit of rest after the busy Christmas days. Maybe you are on a Christmas break. I hope so. Let's see. Where do I go? Podcasts here. And then we'll go to week 52. So this is the 52nd episode of The Break that I'm recording. I'm very proud that I've been able to record an episode every single week this past year. I don't think I've ever done that before. So there are always like moments where I get too busy, but this for this year I made a commitment to be there for you every single week. And I think that worked out well. Same for the walk. I also need to record an episode of the walk. So technically this is not the last. Well, it's probably the last one that's going to be posted, because I usually post the walk first and then the break second. Hey, Peter. Hey, Saula, Ricardo, Squirtle, Steve is there. Sandy is there. Bobby is there. Lynn is there. Kathleen, thank you. So again, Merry Christmas. Hope you had a good time. I'll be talking a little bit about my own Christmas experiences this year, and so many other stuff to talk about. So if it's okay with you, then I'll be starting the recording. And then after I'm done recording the official podcast, the show, I'll get back to you. If you're watching this on Facebook, as usual, I also remind you that there is a YouTube channel where it's a lot easier to subscribe to all the videos that I do. On Facebook, it just depends on what your feed shows you. But in general, I would say only 5% of my followers see my content because of the algorithm. Whereas on YouTube, you have a little bit more luck usually. So if you go to youtube.com/Father Roderick, you'll be able to subscribe there as well. All right. I don't think we have any new patrons this week. Let me double check. So I always want to welcome my my new supporters. Let's see. We've got that. We've got Sean, who has upped his pledge. Anything else? Don't think so. I'm a little bit behind on my on my Gmail, but that's to be expected. During Christmas time, I do my best to not work or to only do the minimum, and email usually goes on the back burner because it's not that urgent usually. Now that I'm no longer working in the parish as a team member, I usually don't get that much email that is urgent. Um, all right. Hey, flying car. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So I'm only going to mention what did I just say? Sean. Sean. All right. Just add this. There we go. All righty. Well, let's get going. Enjoy. Merry Christmas and already in advance, a Happy New Year. I'm Father Roderick, and you are listening to the last podcast episode of the break of the year 2022. The clock is ticking. This year is almost over, and a new year is about to be born. So lots of things to talk about today. This episode is brought to you thanks to my wonderful community of patrons, people that support me with micro donations every single month. I so love their support and their input, because if you become a patron, then you get access to our Discord server where you can interact with me and with the rest of the community. It's a super valuable asset in my life, and especially when it comes to these podcasts and their preparation. You give me your input. You tell me which direction to go. And in the new year, that's even more important as we make new plans. So if you want to join the community, go over to patreon.com/Father Roderick. And I want to specifically mention Sean, who has upped his Patreon monthly donation to the next tier. So thank you, Sean, so much. And thanks to all of you who have been supporting me this new year. And already in advance, welcome to all of you that want to support me in the upcoming year. As you know, I depend on you to be able to reach out to so many people that would never, ever listen to a priest, let alone talk to a priest or meet a priest. And I try to be out there on YouTube, on TikTok, in the podcast sphere, on social media, to build bridges between the world of faith and the world of popular culture. I've been doing that for about 20 years now, and it's touched so many hearts. And you can help me to continue to do that and even to expand that ministry. So patreon.com/Father Roderick.
Do you know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
Face it, Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
I'm recording this on Thursday, December the 29th. So as you are listening to this, maybe situation in the world has changed already. But right now in the news is a bit of an alarming bit of news that came from the Vatican, or alarming, it depends on how you look at it. But Pope Francis, during his Wednesday audience, asked the crowd, and this was not announced, this was unexpected, to pray for Emeritus Pope Benedict, who apparently is very ill. And the way it was worded, the way it was phrased, indicates, if you know the type of the way in which the Vatican has communicated in the past when it comes to the health situation of popes, to me, it's obvious that there is a serious risk that this will be the final phase of Pope Benedict's life, that he is dying, or at least that he is in danger to pass on to the new life very soon, which of course will be a unique situation. I've been in Rome when Pope John Paul II died. But then, of course, that was totally different. He still was the Pope. He had been sick for multiple weeks. And when he died, of course, all of a sudden, we didn't have a Pope anymore. And preparations started for the conclave. In this case, of course, we do have a Pope. Pope Benedict is no longer a Pope. He's an emeritus Pope, as they call it right now. It's a bit unclear what exactly that entails, because it's been 600 years. Oh, there's someone at the door. I got to open the door here for a second. Hold on. Well, that's so kind of you. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to make this tonight. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you so much. Sesame seed, and this is soy sauce? Amazing. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm sorry that I'm recording right now, but are you going to stay in the neighborhood, or do you live nearby, or very cool. Next time, let's make an appointment. Let's eat together and talk a little bit more. In the meantime, I will practice. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I know, yeah. I'm not gonna eat the entire package tonight. Well, wonderful, thank you so much for the recipe and for the kindness. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and let's get in touch. Do I have your email, or are you on WhatsApp or WhatsApp? Let me write that down. Let me just write that down real quick. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm back again. Sorry about that. There was a small interruption, but it was a very pleasant one. It was actually a couple that I met during the Christmas celebrations here in the church. So on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, I was the celebrant here in the church next door. And I met the son of one of the people who actually is leading the community here in my town, and his Korean girlfriend. And we talked, and she only recently came to the Netherlands. And so, as you know, I am a huge fan of the Korean culinary kitchen, or how do you say that? Culinary tradition. I cook a lot of Korean recipes. So we got to talk about Korean cooking. And she, during that encounter, she said, I'm going to bring you some recipes. And then yesterday they went to a Korean store I think in Utrecht, in a big city. Don't have that many specialized Korean stores. And so they just came to my door and brought me Korean noodles. There's the recipe here for bibimbap noodles with soy sauce. And it's specified how to cook them. We've got, what is this? So Korean soy sauce. There is regular sesame oil, which of course also gives a bit, it's like roasted sesame oil, or oil from roasted sesame seeds. This is regular sesame seed, and this is Korean rice vinegar. And so I told her that I was going to make the recipe tonight, and then I'm gonna invite them over maybe in the new year to come and eat. So we'll have a little bit more time to talk. But what a great surprise! And you know what? This is what I love about these Christmas celebrations, where oftentimes there will be new people that come to church, and for many of them, it's been a while. or maybe it can even be the first time. And so I always make sure that I have plenty of time afterwards to talk and to say hello and wish people a Merry Christmas, but also to have some conversations. And that's how you get to know new friends. Really, really wonderful. And I am very, very curious to learn more Korean recipes, because there's something in that kitchen, in that style of cooking that I really, really like. So I was talking about Pope Benedict. So he is probably in the last stage of his life. I presume that the protocol is going to be almost identical to when a current reigning pope dies. I also assume that they will follow like all the various stages. So usually the pope, when he dies, is laid in state. How you say that in St. Peter's Basilica, so people can pay him their respects and pray for him. And then there will be a funeral service. It's oftentimes on St. Peter's Square, because you could try to do it inside, and of course it's winter also in Rome, although the weather is really good. So depending on the weather, maybe they'll do it inside the Basilica or outside on St. Peter's Square, and then he will be laid to rest in the catacombs underneath the Basilica. Pope Benedict has been a major influence on the church in the last, you could even say 50 years, because even before he became pope, he was a very influential cardinal and theologian. I studied a lot of his works when I was still in seminary. He's a very, very good theologian, very German in the sense that he is extremely clear and relatively easy to read, very methodical, different compared to, for instance, John Paul II, who had a very Polish way of writing, which is more circular. It's a different way of thinking. With Benedict and Ratzinger, when he was still just Cardinal Ratzinger, he's very systematic, very methodical, which makes it easy to absorb, to learn. And he always remained a teacher and an academic. And that, of course, had a huge advantage in that he was able to have really in-depth conversations with lots and lots of intellectuals and scientists and philosophers and theologians. But he didn't have that, let's say, that habit of just mingling with the people that you see a lot with Pope Francis. Let's not underestimate Pope Francis, because he too is an academic, and he he's a very good theologian, philosopher, and also overall scientist. But he has lived a lot of his life among the people as a pastor, as a bishop, and that's a difference with Cardinal Ratzinger, who didn't work in a parish, whose life was mostly confined to the academic situation. But I think Pope Benedict may not have been the most, let's say, charismatic pope, but he did have a lot of authority, and I think especially his theological contribution to the church, in his writings, in his homilies, in his encyclical letters, all that will remain extremely valuable for centuries to come. And let's not forget that he did something that nobody saw coming. He is the first pope in, I think, 600 years who abdicated, who stepped down because of health reasons. At least that was what he himself gave as the main reason for him to step down, and to make room for a new pope while he was still alive. That was a complicated situation that I think, thanks to his graciousness, his kindness and modesty, actually worked out pretty well. He lived in a small apartment where there used to be a tiny congregation or a community of sisters that lived there. in the gardens of the Vatican, so in the backyard of the Vatican. And after he retired, he never really, but he did appear in public, but never gave talks or stuff like that. He did write a few things and short essays and forewords and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, some people try to use his authority for the promotion of their own works or opinions, even. So there have been some minor frictions, and I don't think it wasn't really Pope Benedict's fault or anything. It's just that we've never dealt with a situation like that, and so I think that after his passing, church lawyers will and also theologians will probably rethink the whole situation, because it's very likely that Pope Francis, when he will be too sick or too old, impaired in whatever way, to do his job, that he too will step down. I think it's a good thing. I mean, I admired the heroism of John Paul II and also his courage to show himself in public while being very, very impaired and with all his handicaps and his Parkinson's disease. We never really got a confirmation that was what ailed him, but it's pretty clear that it was. And so I think what Pope John Paul II stressed was that there is value to every life, even if you are not very productive anymore. And especially in his last years, of course, most of the usual business in the Vatican was run by other people and not by John Paul II. But he stayed on until the very end, including all the decline. But I don't think that we needed another witness of that kind of martyrdom. So I think it was very wise, and in hindsight, I think also extremely good for the church that Pope Benedict stepped down, because he felt that it was weighing all the changes that needed to be done. It was all weighing so much on him. He needed someone stronger than he was, and he has always been extremely supportive of Pope Francis and his efforts to implement the changes that had already started under Pope Benedict. The press will always try to create contrast, and you will see this when Pope Benedict will ultimately die. You will see that also in the way that reporters will compare these two popes. They will probably say that Pope Benedict represented the kind of conservative, old-fashioned direction, whereas Pope Francis is much more modern and progressive and has made all these changes. But that doesn't do justice to either of them. These two popes have so much in common. I don't think on the level of theology that there is much difference. There's definitely a difference in style. There are maybe also some differences when it comes to executive decisions, but you don't know what Pope Benedict would have done if he had stayed on longer, because a lot of the stuff that Pope Francis has done had already been put in motion, and we only see a little bit of what's going on, whereas Pope Francis has the total picture, and he doesn't make these changes all by himself. He's got a college of cardinals that also advises him, and there's so many other people that know the situation locally in the Roman Curia and also worldwide very well. So it's sad. It always saddens me a little bit that, especially in the media, but also among the people that are not that familiar with the Vatican, you get all these black and white comparisons. I think that what I appreciate of both Pope Benedict and Pope Francis is their love for the church. If you are elected Pope, it's the worst present ever, because you know that your life is no longer yours. In fact, you already know that the moment you get ordained, but especially as a pope, it's such a demanding life, and there's so much rests on your shoulders. I think you need a very special kind of grace to realize in everything that you do that you don't have to do it alone. And what you often see, and I heard this in interviews with Pope Benedict and also in what Pope Francis says very often, if it weren't for the prayer of the people, if it weren't for their own spiritual relationship with God, they would absolutely not be able to carry out the tasks that are linked to the papacy. So let's continue to pray for Pope Benedict, for the Holy Spirit to continue to guide us, and also to bring together people that may try to create division inside the church. We are called to unity. We're called to love one another. And if you see how much both Pope Benedict and Pope Francis love the church and have dedicated their life, and in a certain way also sacrificed their life to guide the church with all the flaws that are linked to the human condition. Of course, no pope is ideal or perfect, but they are very well aware of that as well. But let us pray that the Holy Spirit will strengthen our leaders, will inspire them, and will continue to bring us together under our shepherds. This has been a year of a lot of personal changes. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the last episode of 2022 of The Walk, which is my other podcast. If you look for The Walk with Father Roderick, wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll walk you through everything that happened this year and what I learned from it and how it helped me, and what were the struggles. But for this particular episode, I think I'm going to move on to the next topic. And of course,
Not like movies.
it's
They're
movies and TV
predictable.
shows.
Like the guy gets the girl, and that kid sees dead people, and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. I'm gonna give it to you.
All right, my best TV shows of the year. I am going to mention a couple of television shows that I enjoy tremendously, but they may not be the best shows because I haven't been able to watch that much TV this year. It's been a busy year, and I'd love to hear your recommendations as to what was really worth my time, but I just didn't get around watching it. But for me, what I've seen so far, a few series stand out. Let's start with Severance, which was an amazing science fiction show, first season on Apple TV Plus. And Severance was one of the surprise hits of 2022. It tells the story of a number of people that work at a mysterious company. They don't really know, and we don't really know what they do at that company. But what we do know is that when people enter the offices of the company, their mind is separated from their experiences and memories that they have in their day-to-day life outside of work. And so there's been a procedure that has split their brain in two in a certain way, and so they have their work life and they have their off work spare time life, and these people have no memory of what happens either at work or at home, which of course especially for the people that work at that company is a harrowing experience, because you feel that you're locked up. It's the outside person that makes the decision to actually make that severance in your mind, hence the name of the television show. But if you work there and you are done working and you want to step out the door to live your life, then 1 second later you're back at work and it's the morning and it starts all over again. So it's a kind of slavery in a certain way. The show had a lot of qualities. Acting wise, it's brilliant. There is a whole specific, very peculiar atmosphere in the show, and it reminded me a lot of the television series Lost, when they discovered the hatch and when they discovered the others, and there was this whole laboratory and that sort of stuff. There's a lot in this series that reminds me of the kind of storytelling that they did with Lost in the prime years of Lost. And I can't wait to see the cliffhanger at the end of season 1 was mind-boggling, and I can't wait to see the second season of this show. For me, one of my favorite shows this year. Then, of course, Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings prequel on Amazon Prime, a series that has been in preparation for many years. One of the most, if not the most costly television production ever, but still surprisingly good. I really enjoyed the series. It's a daunting task, I think, to translate let's say the history of Middle Earth to a story for television. And of course, when Tolkien was writing the backstory of Middle Earth, he never even thought of telling it in a way so that you could depict it in any form. It was meant to be read. It was actually more like fake history in a certain way. And so the Silmarillion is covering a huge number of centuries, thousands of years. And the makers of Rings of Power didn't even have access to the Silmarillion. They could only use bits here and there that are also narrated in the Silmarillion that Tolkien later, when he had finished The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, added to the appendices of The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. I'm not sure. Anyway, so he wrote kind of a little bit more of a backstory for The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbits. And of course, he sold the rights to The Hobbit and to The Lord of the Rings when he was not as famous as he is today, because he needed to finance the studies of his children. And he never got the rights back, or the Tolkien estate never got the rights back. But they do have a lot of influence on Rings of Power. Everything is vetted by them. And of course, we don't know the intricacies of the actual contracts that have been signed. It's going to be interesting where they will take this series. So this is going to be multiple seasons. And the creators have already said that they did very, very serious monitoring of the fan reaction. So they watched how we reacted to the story, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we hated. They all want to learn from that, because they know that one thing is to make a story yourself and to try to portray that in the best way possible. But if it doesn't work with the audience, then you're not telling the right story. So it's going to be interesting to see if a lot of the criticism of that certain Tolkien fans had on the first season, how they will implement their reaction to that criticism in season 2. But I think just seeing the quality of season 1, yes, there was a bit of clunky dialogue here and there. There were maybe too many characters, but it was Middle Earth. It was so good to be back. And I have to say, visually, the series was stunning, absolutely stunning. It did have a little bit of almost a dreamlike character. Some people complained that it didn't look real enough. Everything was too beautiful and too pretty. But I'm thinking it's a fairy tale, it's a visual style. It didn't bother me at all. On the contrary, I thought it showed great continuity, visual continuity with the movies that we already know and love so much. Also, one particular thing that I actually really loved, maybe my favorite aspect of the Rings of Power, was the music, was the soundtrack. It's music that I still listen to almost on a daily basis. So it was such a treat to be able to finally watch the Rings of Power. Then on Netflix, towards the end of the year, for me, a total surprise, Wednesday, which tells the story of Wednesday, one of the kids of the Addams family. And it's a bit of a murder mystery show. where it has a lot of the quirkiness and the kind of the dark gothic style of the Addams Family, but it doesn't want to be a spin-off. It doesn't try to implement everything that people knew from the Addams Family in this one season. So there was actually quite a bit of restraint when it comes to the homages that they paid to the original television series and the movies that are already out there. But I think they did a terrific job. It was such an entertaining series, wonderfully played. The main actress who plays Wednesday, I think, is absolutely terrific. But also the supporting cast has become dear to me. Plus, I really like the whole kind of the genre, that it became a bit of a detective story, and there were some twists, and the final episode wrapped everything up quite quickly, and of course, kind of opened the story up to a potential sequel. And I think the series has been so successful. I think we'll get multiple seasons, and I'm glad. I'm really happy. I think, yeah, I've never really cared that much for the Addams Family before. I didn't grow up with it like many of you. So I could just watch it. I could go in with a blank slate, and I loved what I saw, and I can't wait to see where they're going to bring the story next year. I, of course, have to mention Andor, which is the best thing that happened to Star Wars on television so far. Andor has been amazing. If you are a longtime listener to this show, you have heard me rave and rave and rave about what they did with Andor. If you are a patron, $5 or more a month patron, you will have heard my very detailed deep dive episodes for Story Secrets that I did on Andor, where I dissect every single episode, all the details, and also the deeper layers and the story beats that struck me. And there is so much in this series. It's very deep. I think it's also a really interesting social commentary. And it's got a seriousness that we don't associate with Star Wars. But I think that the fans have spoken. It's not the most successful television series for Disney yet, because it's still gathering an audience. Even today, there are lots and lots of people that are now only starting to watch Andor because they just don't care that much for Star Wars, but everybody tells them, go watch it, go watch it. And I would say that to you as well. If you're not a Star Wars fan, if you don't care that much for Star Wars, you can watch this without knowing that much about Star Wars anyway. But watch it for the drama. Watch it as a harrowing story of a resistance that is born under oppression. It's something completely new, and that's what I like the most. This is Star Wars renewing itself, and it so desperately needed this kind of new experimental phase and I hope they will continue to do things that are not just, fan catering. Star Wars, if it wants to survive for a few more decades, then they need to take risks, and that's what they did with Andor, and I think they're all very happy with it. And then maybe my final television show. It's always difficult to say what is your most favorite TV show, but definitely the show that I couldn't stop myself from watching and that I at times binge watched because I only started watching it this year, but it has already been on TV for 3 years now, is For All Mankind, produced by Ronald D. Moore, who was behind the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, who also was leading Outlander, another great television series, very different genre, of course. But with For All Mankind, he's back in his natural habitat because he's written so much for the big science fiction franchises. He's been very important to Star Trek as well. Deep Space Nine heavily relied on, especially in the later seasons, on Ronald D. Moore's input and his story ideas. For All Mankind is something that I liked it at first, and after a few episodes, I was hooked, and I couldn't stop watching it. So well done. It's extremely well written and acted, and it's just, the mystery. Where is this going? What's happening? There's a lot in there story-wise, but also some extremely impressive writing on an emotional level. There were episodes that made me cry, and I still think of what happened to the main characters, and that is rare. There's a lot of television, but there's very little television that actually touches my heartstrings nowadays. For All Mankind, it was absolutely fantastic.
Catholics rock!
It's time for our final visit to the Peculiar Bunch. These weird Catholics that, with all their traditions and rituals that you may not understand.
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat! What do they eat? Light bulbs?
But I'm happy to be at your service to explain some of these quirky things that Catholics say, do, or believe. So, let's go.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
All right. So this is the final show of the year, and you kind of look back on what happened this year. And for each and every one of us, there's a lot that we're thankful for. There are also things that we regret, that we kind of wish that we'd done them differently. Decisions that we made that didn't turn out the way we hoped. Also, maybe things that were hurtful, moments where we didn't show our best side, where we neglected maybe family or friends, where, well, if we could go back, we would do things differently. But that's one of the wonderful things. On January the 1st, there's a new year. And there's something to say about this tradition of starting the new year with new resolutions, with a new decision to do things better and to learn from what went wrong. And that, of course, is that's how you grow. A mistake is never just a mistake. It can be a learning moment, but very often you need some help to realize where the lesson is, and also maybe how to make right what you did wrong. Sometimes there is lingering damage, and so starting anew is not just Control Alt Delete, but it's not just a reboot. Sometimes it will also have to entail that you try to repair what went wrong. Well, all this brings me to a question that was asked in the Discord section of our server, where people can ask questions, and there was a whole discussion about confession. And as you know, my community consists of Catholics and non-Catholic Christians and non-Christians and people that would define themselves more as atheists or agnostic than believers. And so in that faith section, you often get also observations from people that are not familiar with this whole idea of confessing and may actually feel a bit awkward about it. And so the question that was asked, so why would you have to do that? Confess your sins to an outsider, to a priest, to someone you don't know. And definitely, someone who you would never just walk up in the street and tell your sins or your mistakes to total strangers. So why does the Catholic Church require us to do that in the sacrament of confession? Well, I'll try to reply. There are multiple dimensions to this practice. And the first one is just an historical one. This is what the Church has done ever since its conception, since the very beginning. So for 2,000 years, the sacrament of confession has had a central place among the sacraments, the 7 sacraments that the Catholic Church celebrates. And the forgiveness of sins even goes back to the ministry of Jesus himself. So, and that's always when it comes to the traditions and the rituals of the Catholic Church and the sacraments specifically, they all go back on what Jesus did. And so there are multiple stories that have been told for generations, and ultimately were also written down about Jesus' interactions with people. And he wasn't just a guy who multiplied bread, walked over water, and raised people from the dead. Jesus also forgave people, helped them to realize what they had done wrong or where they were actually still walking the wrong path. And he urged them to return, to convert. Conversion itself, convertere in Latin, means to turn around. And he, of course, never forced people to do that, but he did what he could to help people to change their lives. And for him, it was very important that if you wanted to follow him, then maybe you would have to change your ways. You had to make different decisions. And of course, if that wasn't the case, so what's the point of following Jesus? It was supposed to be a new life. And if you look at the early stories of the gospel, you see that this was already part of the preaching of John the Baptist, who was a precursor to Jesus. And he called on people to come to the River Jordan, to be immersed in the water and then be baptized so that you could wash away your sins and start anew. A beautiful ritual. And then Jesus himself also came to John the Baptist and wanted to be baptized, to lead the way. And that is very important for Catholics. Is always the why we do things is because we believe that Jesus wants us to follow him in these practices and rituals. And so, and sometimes even when people are asking for Jesus' help in a very, let's say, pragmatic, physical way, like, what can I do for you? Well, I'm blind, I want to see, duh. Or I can't walk, help me so that I can walk again. Sometimes Jesus will also tell them, your sins are forgiven, your faith has rescued you. Your sins are forgiven. Go, be free, start again. There's this conversation that he has with this woman who has sinned and is about to be stoned, actually, so punished to death. She's going to be executed for her sins. And then Jesus doesn't condemn her. And he tells the people that are already there to kill that woman that the one who should throw the first stone should be the one without sins. And everybody walks away. And then Jesus stays and he says, your sins are forgiven. Begin a new life, or something to that extent. And so you see that Jesus liberates people by taking away what burdened them, what also sometimes caused exclusion and for people to be rejected by others. Jesus always wanted to give people another chance. He tells this beautiful story of a father who has two sons, and one of them walks away with the inheritance, and then he makes all the wrong decisions and ultimately decides to go back to his father, and his father is there, he's waiting for him, and he embraces him and says, this son of mine was dead and now he lives again. That is the basis of the sacrament of confession. And then later on, Jesus tells his apostles, I'm sending you out. I'm going back to my Father, but I'm sending you out to baptize people and to forgive their sins. He gives Peter you could say, the symbolic keys to the kingdom of heaven. And he says, whose sins you forgive are truly forgiven, and whose sins you don't forgive are not forgiven. And this is revolutionary because Jesus gives Peter the same power that he has. So how can a human being forgive sins if you're not the victim of those sins, if you're not even in a part of the equation? That would be presumptuous, right? How can a human being, in the name of God, forgive sins? That's where the question comes from. That is so weird. But we believe that Jesus relegated this power to forgive sins in his name. It's never without Jesus, but priests, bishops are in these situations, in these sacramental situations, they are representatives of Christ. It's Christ who forgives through the words and the actions and the gestures of the priest. And so it's very important, I think, to always see this in a context that is not just a context of punishment. And we often associate confession with this whole kind of legal approach where, I messed up, so I have to now, they're going to read me my rights. I have to make a confession, and then I'll hear my punishment. But it's much more important to see this in the context of healing. And if you want a metaphor to help you understand why, or at least how the Catholic Church wants the sacrament to be celebrated, it's when you go and see a doctor or maybe a psychologist. If you go to a doctor, you know that it's confidential and that person has dedicated his or her life to help people like you to get better. They're not there to tell you, oh, you are ill? Oh my gosh, well, that is too bad, but it's probably your own fault. So you know what? Good luck with that. No doctor would do that. So there's no reason to hide your ailments, your sickness, your symptoms for a doctor, because of course the doctor is there to help you, but can only help you if you tell the doctor what's wrong or what went wrong. If I break an arm, I'm going to the doctor and say, I think I broke my arm. And then the doctor will try to help you to get better. And so psychologists, same thing. If you need some help with your mental health, you tell a psychologist what's going on. And it's not necessary to make up a story or to try to present yourself in a better light or something like that. Maybe we sometimes do that because we're afraid, and there may be a lot of like inner talk that is very condemning, but a good psychologist will help you also to get rid of that inner voice that constantly accuses you. And the same is true when it comes to the spiritual domain. When you've really hurt other people and you regret it, that, of course, is very important. Jesus wants you to hear and to experience forgiveness. Because he knows how much that can burden us, how much that can weigh on us when we messed up, and how oftentimes it triggers that inner voice that condemns us, and it tells us, you see, you're not good. You messed up again. You're no good. You'll never be a good person. There's a lot of that self-talk that many people suffer from. The priest is there to speak with the words that Jesus would tell you. I have not ever encountered a priest who accused me or berated me, or the priests that I've experienced have always been extremely welcoming, very careful, prudent, you could say, very good listeners, and always inquiring but never to just out of curiosity or in a sort of legal attitude, like, okay, so name the 5 times you did this and the 10 times. No, it's not about that. It's always like, so how can I help you? And what's weighing on you? And tell me about your relationship with God. Tell me about your relationship with the people around you. How do you talk to yourself? And by asking these questions, a priest can help someone who comes to confession to be liberated from that burden and to share with someone else who doesn't know you, and so is not prejudiced. Is that a word? He doesn't have any preconceptions. He can look at it maybe a little bit more objectively than you can yourself. And then he can forgive you in the name of Christ himself. And so it's always important to realize that the sacraments always have this tactile, real element to it, because that's how Jesus interacted with people. He never just sent a letter to someone like, hey, I got your email about your sins, and well, here's here's my reply, and you just activate it by pressing enter, and your sins will be forgiven. No, he's there. He touches people. He speaks to them. His advice is tailor made for that particular person, because no one is the same, and that's why. I mean, it's like when you're sick. Of course, you can go online and you can Google and you'll find solutions, but there's always a risk that you won't find what you need. And it's most of the time, even if I call my physician and say, well, I think it's pretty simple. I think I have this and this and this. Sometimes she will tell me to come over and to have a talk. And the last time I did that, she had some very pertinent questions that I, of course, could have never Googled myself. And it gave me a lot of insight in what was going on. And so that is why the sacrament of confession has that personal angle. And then what I often hear from people that are not Catholic is, well, why can't I just tell God right away, in my heart, like I messed up? And of course, that is already extremely beautiful, and it's worth a lot when you come to that point in life where you can look at yourself honestly, and you can pray for forgiveness, and you can tell God that you're sorry. The only thing is, in your prayer, and we all know this from experience, God is not going to talk back like that. He's not. So you miss that whole accompaniment that you have in the sacrament of confession. You don't have that pastoral dimension of someone who listens, can ask some questions, can help you refine your understanding of how to better yourself, or go to the core of the problem. And so this is why I think it's very wise of Jesus to have mandated his apostles to have those encounters in his name. And then, of course, priests are also fallible people. Always also remind you, if you sometimes may feel this kind of like, oh, but I don't feel comfortable at all telling this to anyone, let alone telling this to a perfect stranger. But priests are also sinners. They also confess. They also mess up. They also hurt other people. So they're not better than you. Oftentimes when I hear confessions, I actually feel much worse than the people that come to confession. And they give me an example to strive towards. And so, and then of course, priests are there to help you, to take away the fear, and to accompany you. And this is why also confession is a recurring thing. And you can go to confession as often as you like, or as often as you feel you need it. But always think of it in terms of it's someone who is mandated by the church and by Jesus himself to be a friend, to be a companion, to be a doctor for your soul, and also to be, in a certain way, a colleague, someone who oftentimes has gone through the same stuff in life as you have, and who has heard so much and has learned so much from other confessions. And that experience makes a priest very humble. And also I'm always extremely thankful when someone dares to make that step. But I can also totally understand that for some people, this is a very hard thing to do, very difficult, and they may be afraid that it will trigger things. And, Jesus never forces anyone. And if you if the best that you can get to is asking in your heart for forgiveness, by all means do that and ask for courage and ask for the Holy Spirit to guide you further if that's God's will. But if you need a person to talk to who will never, ever divulge anything that he hears in confession, if you want someone else to look at your life and your struggles from the perspective of someone who has a lot of pastoral experience, and who knows how to listen, then the church is there for you if you need it. The church is welcoming you, but it's all up to you. I hope that clears it up a little bit. And so for the new year, well, that's kind of you could say a secular reflection almost of what happens in confession. On January the 1st, we tell ourselves, you know what? Hey, we've gone through a lot last year, and let's turn the page. Let's start anew. I'm ready for the new year. I'm going to make this a better year than last year. That's kind of how you want to feel when you come out of confession. You are like, okay, so the slate is clean. I have the guarantee that my sins are forgiven and forgotten, and I have sacramental strength to build my life up and to make new choices and to make my life and the life of others better than it was.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
I am currently reading book 100 of my Goodreads book challenge of 2022. It's been an amazing year. I'm so happy that I started to do these challenges, and I'm ready for a new challenge in 2023. I want to read 150 books, and with my current habit of reading, it's not going to be a problem. But I don't want to. I don't do this to show off or anything. There's a little bit of that gamification, of course. I like a challenge, but I'm so grateful that I did, because I learned so much this year, and I've been able to live other people's lives in a certain way and plunge myself into experiences that I would never have in my own life. And I've learned so much from other, from scientists, from fellow theologians and psychologists. And it's been I'm so happy that I'm back to reading. I want to give you here a list of the 5 fiction books that, so not, how do you say that? Nonfiction. I talked about it last week, but the fictional stories that I really loved reading. And I already told you last week that I was surprised that I actually didn't read that many fiction books. I mostly read biographies or science-based books, but I did read a couple of books that I really enjoyed. First one was Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. He's a very prolific fantasy writer. And Age of Myth, I listened to an audiobook version of the story with multiple actors. It was almost like a radio play. Extremely enjoyable, good story. Very kind of a bit tropey still in this first book, but apparently it gets better in the subsequent sequels. So a tropey in the sense that some elements are a bit like Tolkien or other fantasy writers, but it is a different world, and it's what I loved about it is that it's easy to follow. You're not overwhelmed with names and facts and historic events like sometimes that's kind of one of the reasons that I never read the Game of Thrones books, because it's too much. I get lost in these books. But Michael Sullivan really has a knack for writing fantasy as if you are watching a movie or a television show. And I loved it. And I'm going to read the subsequent sequels as well. Another book this is a book that really made me laugh so often. It's written by Seth Grahame-Smith, and it's called How to Survive a Horror Movie. It is a book that is written as if horror movies were real, And if you are in a horror movie, and it gives you all sorts of advice on what to do and especially what not to do. And of course, it uses a lot of the kind of the conventions in the horror genre, but then it's of course meant to help you survive whatever happens in horror movies, and it's so funny. Yeah, go read it. It's hard to describe, but man, it was a lot of fun. One of the funniest books that I've read this year. Then a classic one, C.S. Lewis, The Magician's Nephew. It's one of the stories in his Narnia series. Not the first book he wrote, but chronologically, it is the first book of the series. It tells the story of the first discovery by two kids of this other world of Narnia. And it is also one of the books where I think the mix of fantasy and theology works the best. C.S. Lewis can sometimes be a bit, his theological metaphors can be a bit ham-fisted sometimes. There were a couple of books in the Narnia series where I really struggled with that. It was like so forced, felt so forced that it almost got in the way of enjoying the story, because as a theologian myself, I was like, oh, I see what you're doing here, but it feels too pushy. But not in The Magician's Nephew. I thought it was extremely elegant, subtle. It's well written. It's got that wonder of the first discovery, and you get to learn a few details about the wardrobe story. For instance, why is there a lantern post on the other side of the closet? When you enter the snowy landscape of Narnia, there's this lamppost. Well, these early stories tell you why, and it's genius. I loved it. So yeah, definitely for me so far, one of the best of the series. I haven't finished all the books yet. I think I've read 3 now, so I think there are 2 more to read. Then Pierce Brown, another young adult series, very popular. The first book is called Red Rising. I think this is one of the books that is closest to what I liked about the Hunger Games. I love the world building of the Hunger Games. Also the social commentary on all the division in society and all these, the haves and the have-nots and the way the power is distributed in that world. Red Rising is similar to that story, but it's almost as in the Hunger Games. At one point, Kathleen, is her name? No, Katniss goes to this capital city where all the people are rich. She herself is from a very poor family, lives in a poor district. And then she arrives in this amazing city where everybody lives such an opulent lives. It's a bit like Mon Mothma in Andor, like super rich and glamorous and whatnot. But then, of course, the Hunger Games begin. But Red Rising is what would happen if Katniss tried to infiltrate in that world, became one of those rich people. Well, that is a little bit what happens to the protagonist of Red Rising. Not only are people much richer in the capital district or whatever it's called, but they're also genetically different. They've been upgraded. And so there's this guy who, in order to bring down the oppression of these rich people, he becomes one of them. But it also entails getting all these genetic modifications and becoming super strong. And it's a bit like the Moses story as well, where Moses, of course, being a Hebrew, then is raised at the court of the Pharaoh, and for most of his younger years lives in opulence and with great power. And it's only later on that he identifies with the lot of the slaves, and then leads them to freedom. Very easy to read. Definitely going to end up as a television series one of these years. And then my last book that I enjoyed tremendously. I just read it yesterday. I finished reading it yesterday. It's written by John Green, who also wrote The Fault in Our Stars, which has been turned into a pretty successful movie. This book is called Turtles All the Way Down. It was his second novel. It's not a sequel, it tells a separate story, but it has a lot of the same conventions of his first book, where it's geared towards a younger audience of teenagers and young adults. And in this case, it tells the story of a girl who suffers from OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and also has a lot of anxiety issues. So it's written in the first person perspective, as if you are her. And so you get access to her obsessive thoughts and how oftentimes the tiniest things can bring her into this loop, this disaster loop, where it's like what we do with doom scrolling, that happens in her mind, and it just like worst case scenarios over and over again. And then her struggle to connect to her peers that don't suffer from those same mental illness issues, and sometimes also don't understand her. And then there's this one boy who likes her for who she is, and she doesn't have to be fixed in order to be important to him. And so there's this whole deeper meaning, or this deeper message of accepting yourself despite your flaws, and also accepting that maybe there is not a cure, there's no fix, and that too can be okay. It's okay to be not okay. This sounds as if, well, it's a super how do you say that? It's all about the mental issues of this protagonist, but there is a deeper mystery. It has to do with a missing father, and so that's in the background. It's not that important, but it does make for a satisfying conclusion to the story. Sometimes it's difficult to read, in the sense that you're so much identifying as a reader with this young woman, that you feel how oppressive it sometimes is, that you're literally imprisoned by your own thoughts, by your own self-speak in a certain way. And well, I don't suffer from OCD, but I am familiar with how damaging self-talk can be. And so I did recognize a couple of things in this book. And I really thought that John Green did a terrific job of writing in a very respectful way about this. And I've seen some reactions to his book from people that actually are also suffering from OCD. And they say, this, I don't know how you do it, but you read my mind. This is my life. This is how I feel. This is what I live every day. And thank you for letting other people know what my life on the inside looks like. So impressive book, very impressive. Turtles All the Way Down. It's a covert reference to Discworld by Terry Pratchett. The world built on a huge giant turtle. What's underneath the turtle? It's another turtle. And then all the way down. All right, let's talk about food and health. All right. My final trip to the kitchen for 2022, and I wanted to talk about the magic of wraps. This is one of the things that I've prepared quite often this year, and it's especially for lunch. I got myself these tortilla wraps, and I combined it with lots of Mexican mixes, with sometimes with meat, sometimes with tofu. And I got inspired to experiment with these wraps because of a visit to a place where probably I shouldn't have gone this last year. And it was Taco Bell. Taco Bell is very, very present in US fast food culture. But in the Netherlands, in this part of the world, it's extremely rare. There are only a few restaurants, and they're tiny. So I went to a Taco Bell in Arnhem just to check it out. And I got myself a tortilla, or two tortillas. And so I like maybe 20 years ago, I went to the United States and I had my first experience of Taco Bell. And since we were not familiar of that kind of fast food, I actually kind of liked it. I'd never eaten anything that was, Tex-Mex kind of. Of course, it's not really Mexican or anything, but it was so different from all the burger stuff that, frankly, I sometimes get really fed up with if I am in the US, because it's all tastes the same to me. And so it was kind of refreshing. It's maybe not the word for food that has to do with beans, but it was like, okay, I think I like this. But then for decades, I've never ever eaten at Taco Bell, but I saw that they just opened a restaurant near the station, the railway station in Arnhem. So I think I walked there, which was like a 4-hour walk or something like that. It's like, I think I have some calories to spare. Let's get some tortillas. And then I was so disappointed. It was terrible. And it was, especially the thing that irked me the most was that it was pretty expensive. And I was like, hey, I can make this at home. And so that's what I did. I just Googled how to make the burritos in Taco Bell style, and I duplicated the recipe, and it actually tasted better. And then I was like, oh well, now I know I can do much better. So I started to experiment with different fillings, and this was vital to the experience. I taught myself how to fold a tortilla wrap. There is a technique that is used in well, maybe not at Taco Bell, but definitely at Chipotle. They've got these big burritos, and there's a lot of filling inside. And I always wonder, how do they roll that up? If I try to do that, I basically end up with a cigar, and I take a bite from one end, and then all the stuff that was once inside the burrito will exit on the other side. Well, turns out there is a specific burrito folding technique. And once I got that down, I was like, okay, this is now a staple recipe for me for lunch. And one burrito, especially I always take the whole grain burritos. It fills me up for the rest of the day. And then, of course, another advantage of these Mexican style burritos is that there's always some protein in there. Could be, some cream, cheese, some meat, or beans. There's a lot of protein, so you don't have to eat much to carry you through the entire afternoon. So really loved it. On my list for next year is you could say the Oriental variant of this, and that is to make wraps with rice paper, especially the spring rolls, the Vietnamese spring rolls. I've been watching a couple of these videos. I've got all the ingredients, so that's something I'm going to practice with during my winter break. More about that later on in this show, because I don't want to pitch anything here in the kitchen segment that I haven't tried myself first.
We are on the cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean?
Just plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device, and it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner built, whoa.
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
There is one more thing here on the show that we need to talk about, and I kind of put it in the technology section, but it's a thing of its own. I want to talk about my favorite games of the year 2022. I did play a lot of games, especially towards the end of the year. Always when winter comes, I like to snuggle up in a chair and put a blanket over my knees and then play video games. And so but I didn't play many different games. It also has to do with the fact that a lot of the games, I only have them on PC. And as you know, I rebuilt my PC. It used to be pretty loud and still consumes quite a bit of energy. So I try to avoid playing many hours on the PC. I'm considering maybe getting a how do you call it, a Stream Deck. Is it called Stream Deck? I think the Valve. So it's like a portable. It looks a bit like the Nintendo Switch. It's much larger, and you can play a lot of the games that were made for PC. You can play them, but then on a portable device. And of course, since it's portable, it doesn't consume as much energy as a full-fledged, big PC. Anyway, so here are some of the games that I enjoyed playing. The first one, of course, definitely played it for the most amount of time, is Valheim. Very cheap game. I think it's not even $20. And it's an amazing game. It's a bit like Minecraft, but then beautiful. You can have adventures, but you can also build houses and cities and towns that you can play together. It's surprisingly bug-free for a game that has been in development only for a very short time. They've just opened another biome, so you've got these different parts of the world with different enemies. What I love the most in Valheim is that it is, sure, you can play, you can fight, you can try to defeat the bosses at various levels, but you can also just build stuff. It even has like a free builders mode where you don't have to go and chop wood and gather stones, but you can just build whatever you want, providing, of course, that you still obey the laws of gravity. And it's been so much fun to build these villas and different types of, and to do it together with friends. Yeah, definitely a game that I did not expect to play this much, and I still love to just be there. It's a game where it's a cozy game in a certain way. I like to just be inside that world. Second game that I spent a lot of time playing just recently is Dreamlight Valley. It's a bit of a Animal Crossing genre game with Disney characters. It's a lot of fun. It's very simple, a bit too simple. It's starting to bore me quite a bit. But what I like about it, the game is not even out yet officially. I play it on Xbox Game Pass, but they are still they're going to release it next year for real, and they're still in the phase where they're slowly adding new areas and new Disney characters. It's fun. There are little stories also. The building is very limited. You could basically say, I want this particular house, and boom, it puts it down, and you can't modify anything. You can make you have your own house, so you can expand it with some rooms and then get some furniture for that. But I don't know. I needed something simple to rest my mind, and it involved a bit of gathering. I like the whole Disney vibe and the songs that are playing in the background. Yeah, it's fun, but I don't think I'm going to play it much in 2023. Then a game that is on my list for this winter break just came out on Xbox Game Pass. And of course, I have to play it. It's Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. For the first time, all the movies, the 9 Star Wars movies, have been integrated into one Lego game experience. I love these Lego games, and apparently this is one of the best that they've made. It is still a bit grindy, does have the downsides of that every Lego game has. It can become a bit repetitive, but to be able to walk around in all these different environments that we know from the movies, and also the quirky Lego humor that these games are known for, is definitely putting this on my list of best games of 2023. Then a surprise game, at least for me, was a surprise how much I liked it. It's called Firewatch. It's almost an old-fashioned adventure where you are in a beautiful, I think it's Canadian area, and you are a supervisor of a natural reserve, and then there is a mystery. Stuff happens, and you have to go explore. It's beautifully made. it feels free form, but it is actually very guided. There's always, it's a linear game. So in the end, everybody who played the game has more or less the same experience. But I like the pace, and I love how beautiful it is. It's very atmospheric, and again, it's like one of those games where I just like to play it because I feel like I'm in a totally different world. And it's almost as if you're reading a novel in a certain way. It's wonderful, wonderful game, Firewatch. And then last one, but not the least, still playing it right now in preparation for the sequel to this game that will come out next year. It's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. What an amazing game. The best Star Wars game I've ever played. Also linear. You guide your hero through lots and lots of challenges, but it is amazing how good it looks. And even on older gear, I'm playing this on the Xbox One, so that's a pretty old console. And it is as if you're watching a movie. It's so incredibly well executed, and it's got all the good stuff that you want in the Star Wars game. And it's a compelling story. I even don't care that much for the game aspect of it. I put it on like easy. I just want to experience the story. It's so good. And apparently the sequel is going to be even better. If this is the how do you say that? If this is the type of quality, is the standard for Star Wars games in the future, then Star Wars games may actually become just as popular and just as important to the Star Wars franchise as are the movies and the television shows. Those were my favorite games of the year. Can't wait to hear your suggestions for games. I have some time off in the weeks to come, so let me know.
We
already played that one. Let's start wrapping it up. We need to. This has been a long show. My apologies for that, but I want to end with a short inspirational thought. But before that, I want to let you know that I'm going on a short winter break. I've never done that before, but I really need it. I need to step away a little bit from work, recharge my batteries, and also kind of rest my brain. And I know that this is going to help me creatively. However, I will not leave you without any updates and podcasts. And that's just because I don't like this time of year, podcasting wise, because all my favorite podcasters are on a break as well. And then they just don't do any shows, or you get these rehashed shows with like best of fragments from the shows that I've already listened to. I want to keep bringing you new stuff, but I'm going to do very short, like mini episodes of the break that I can prepare in advance, so I don't have to spend much time doing them. And then I'll be back sometime towards, sometimes in the second half of January with fresh content. But yeah, I'm gonna go on a short break. Here's my quote, last quote of the year. Focus on how to be social, not on how to do social. That's a good one. All right. Happy New Year. Talk to you soon. All right. That was a little bit longer than I anticipated. Oh, I am tired. I'm glad I did not record 5 shows as I initially this morning planned to do. I am done. I am done. All right. Oh, some of you wanted to know what headset this is. This is the Beyerdynamic DT77 or 770 Pro. So it's the Beyerdynamic. These are standard headphones in the broadcasting industry, at least in the Netherlands. So radio, television, everybody uses these because they're extremely neutral. So what you hear is what you get. And they're also comfy. They're really completely over ear, and you can take these ones off and wash them, which is also specific to this brand. They're very sturdy, expensive, very expensive, but it's one of these things, like a microphone, a good microphone. It's worth it because they will last for years, and it really makes a difference in the quality. All right. That's a wrap. Yeah, no pun intended. All righty. Lynn has been watching the Great British Bake Off shows. Yes. Always great, these cooking shows. Mike, hey, Mike. The Vatican says it's the equivalent ritual for a retired bishop of Rome, plus the laying in state. Ah, okay. So they do an episcopal ritual. It's going to be interesting. Cool. What a cozy home. Yeah, my apologies for the interruption, but it's so rude not to answer the door when someone is waiting there. I hope life is good in Iowa. I wasn't streaming on TikTok. This was just YouTube. This must be one of my, Casey's probably following me on TikTok. Now, if I do TikTok live streams, I do them TikTok only because it's a very different dynamic than these shows. Have you ever tried Grounded? No, I don't actually know what that refers to. Is that a show? Have you watched Star Trek Prodigy? Yes, it's awesome. I still have to watch the second half of the season, but I love it. Kate Mulgrew is great. Margot is busy working at the veterinary ER. Taco Hell. Some people like it, though. Here it's considered to be almost, it's so exclusive. There are so few restaurants that they can charge basically anything. So for 2 burritos and a drink, I paid $8, I think. And it was not much food. Like the burritos were tiny, like mini pancakes. Yeah, what a ripoff. Rolling egg rolls, spring rolls is a relaxing activity. Yeah. I am definitely going to try them out. Next time Father is in the US, I need some real Mexican food. It will blow his mind. I did sample some real Mexican food. I've been to Texas multiple times, and then of course we went to, proper restaurants. And it's good. I'm not always in the mood for Mexican food for some reason, because it's kind of on the heavy side, maybe because of all the protein. So there were times that, like we did a convention, and then at the end, where are we going to eat? Oh, let's go eat Mexican. And I was like, I just want to go to a Chinese restaurant because it's just so much, and it knocks me out. But that's, if I'm honest, that's mostly the case with any restaurant in the US. Like when I was in San Francisco, not San Francisco, when I was in Anaheim, we went to this Italian restaurant. And now, of course, I was also sick, which didn't help. But just the portion size, it was insane. It was so much food. And if it's too much, I don't enjoy it anymore. It's just like, I want this to end. See, get me out of here. Get me out of here. I'm a European. Yeah, Dave's and Buster's. That's the one. Yeah, you remember, Lynn. It was heavy. It was really, really heavy. Tex-Mex. Yeah, I think that was Tex-Mex. I didn't know there was Pacific Mexican food as well. I liked I like the breakfast burritos. That's something that that I discovered in Dallas, and that was nice. Yeah, those were really, really good. Again, also because they're very filling, and I like hearty in the morning more than sugary. So yeah, if I eat a bowl of cereal, I'll be hungry an hour after that, but not with burritos and whole grain stuff. Tacos. I love tacos. The Italian food that I remember the best was at Olive Garden. That's barely Italian. I mean, it's supposed to be Italian, but it's not. There's really no Italian cooking there. But I remember, I think it was may have been when I was staying in Georgia, in Atlanta. I ordered pasta con vongole, like seafood pasta, thinking that it would be pasta con vongole, which is very, very light. It's if you follow me on the Discord server, I posted a photo of what I prepared yesterday with Father Harry. We made pasta con vongole, and there's almost nothing in it. It's just olive oil and some garlic, salt and pepper, and then fish. Oh no, not fish. Seafood, vongole, shells. But what I got at the Olive Garden was, like, first of all, the plate was like big like this. There was a mountain of pasta, and it was literally drenched in an oily, creamy sauce. It was nice. It was very salty. And there was so much seafood. It was stuffed with prawns and fish and stuff. And then, and it was all inside the pasta as well. And I don't know if they used whipped cream or something like that, but the sauce was the worst. It was very salty, and it was extremely heavy. And I remember eating a few bites, and I got nauseous. I was like, I'm done. And I hadn't even started. And of course, they put it in a doggy bag or in a small container to bring home. And I think I ate 3 days to finish what was supposed to be just a simple pasta con vongole. But oh my gosh. Yeah. And now I'm hungry. It's fake Italian, yes. And actually pretty expensive as well. Eating at restaurants in the US is expensive. And the prices are pretty high compared to Europe. And then you also have to pay you have to tip, which is also like 15%. You have to add that to the price. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's such a staple thing that Americans do. They eat at restaurants multiple times per week sometimes. Wow, for those prices, I'd rather cook myself. I can cook an entire week with the budget for one evening at, with blooming onions and that sort of stuff. 18 to 20% to tip. Wow. I understand, because they underpay their personnel. Here we just pay people a good wage. So if we tip, it's a euro or €2, and it's just like an extra. It's not compulsory or anything. I like our system better. In Japan, it's an insult to tip. You're absolutely not supposed to tip. Yeah. All right. I'm going to cook. Hey, thanks for dropping by. Hope you have a wonderful evening, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye.